Hello, everyone. Welcome to our image evaluation procedural overview. My name is Karen Davis, and I'm going to kind of kick things off here a little bit to go over how you can participate in Camera Club of Richmond's image evaluations. And this is 2026. Make sure everybody knows what year we're in. Some of my other facilitators for this are Pat Hutchinson. Pat was our digital director for 2024 and 2025, and she had a big hand in writing a lot of these procedures. She is handing the baton over to Kemp Davis, who is our incoming digital director. And so Kemp will be accepting all the images as they come in and organizing them all and presenting them at the various meetings. And also here is Michael Orr. Michael is a former digital director from several years ago, and he is now the print director. So if you are going to be entering prints, Michael's going to become your best bud. He'll give you some instructions and guidelines on what we're doing. And then I saw also on the phone is Jane Webb. For those of you who are new to the club, Jane is our vice president, and one of her main job is to put together the agendas for the monthly meetings. So Jane finds those evaluators who are going to be evaluating the images, and also the presenters for all the different topics that will be presented at our second Tuesday of the month monthly meetings for Camera Club of Richmond. So those are kind of the main participants here. I see several faces that have been around for a while that have entered images before, and I see some brand new folks who new to the club or new to this image evaluation process. So I wanted to start off, I found an article. I'm going to just hit a couple of highlights from an article that I discovered. I think it was written back in 2014 on why would you need a critique on your photography. And there were 5 main reasons that were given. And so I'm going to borrow a little bit from this article, but identifying opportunities to grow and improve. Just like with anything, your photography, you're always learning. I know I'm always learning, and I feel like I'm just barely above that novice level of learning about photography. But by putting your images in, you're getting feedback from another individual to help you see some things that maybe you don't see, because you're looking at it's like looking at your children. I took that picture and you have an emotional attachment to it, but how can you make that better? And the critiques will help you to grow and to be a better photographer. The second reason, to understand and embrace your strengths. So a lot of times the evaluator, the person that's doing the critique, will say, you've done a great job with your composition, or, you found some great lighting for that particular picture. So it's also a way to reemphasize the things that you are doing correctly. And then they will hopefully give you some ideas to maybe improve on those. Number 3 is definitely the one that spoke to me, because when I first went into my very first image evaluation, I joked with folks that I wanted to wear my trench coat and a hat and sunglasses and just sort of sneak in and, be anonymous with that. But reason 3 is to grow a thicker skin. I'd never had anybody critique my work, and I was just a real novice at that point. And it did help me grow a thicker skin, because I could take that quote unquote criticism, those helpful suggestions, and not take it personally, but realize that what they were trying to do was to help me be a better photographer and grow a little bit of a thicker skin. Number 4, to obtain an objective perspective. Jane, as I mentioned, has done a really good job of finding different people to come in and look at our photos and give us feedback on those photos. And, and they usually will all start out by saying, remember, this is my opinion. You are the artist, but this is my opinion, and I'm trying to give you an objective perspective on this particular photograph and give you something to think about. So it makes you look at things a little bit differently. And reason number 5, to achieve artistic clarity. I love this one. To try and come up with what it is that you want to say as an artist with your work. And a lot of times, if you've got a Fred Morton who's looking at your picture, or an Anthony Rumley, two of our critiquers, judges that come in, they can help you determine what it is that you're trying to say with the work that you're doing. So just a little bit of an overview of why you might want to consider participating in these. I keep telling people when they talk to me about it, it really is painless. It really is. I've survived all these years, with sitting there. I don't feel like I need to wear my trench coat anymore. Your photos will be shown, and then the critique is given, and then the name of the photographer is the very last thing. So people are looking, admiring your work, and then all of a sudden they go, well, that one is Jane Webb's. That one is Michael Orr's. And you start to recognize people's style after a while. It's kind of a little game that you can start to play in your head as these things come up. So that's the process. As I mentioned, Pat and Michael and I have kind of corroborated on this procedure over the years and have tweaked it. And as Jane pointed out a little while ago, we still have a little boo-boo in there that we're going to fix. So they're posted on the internet. I sent them out via email, but you can find them on our website. And I'm going to share screen and bring those procedures up so we can just kind of walk through them. So I'm going to pause for a moment here, take a breath, and see if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask already.
Yes, I have a couple. I already forgot one of them, but one of them was I have never submitted a panel before, and I don't understand how you have to have certain sizes, like so many pixels one way and so many pixels another way, and how does that affect using a panel, setting it into panel, because it's going to be really, really long one way.
It's exactly the same, Carol. If you set the maximum width to 3840 and the maximum height to 2160, do you use Lightroom or Photoshop?
Lightroom. Okay,
if you set the maximum width and the maximum height to what the maximum are in the document, it'll come out fine. I can't explain it, but it works.
Okay.
But what you'll end up with, and vertical, use that same for horizontal and vertical.
But just so you know, Carol, what it'll end up being is like Pat was saying, it'll be 3840 wide, but it'll be something much narrower, or excuse me, much shorter. So it might be like 1,000 pixels tall, but 3840 wide if it's a panoramic image.
Okay. So it does the adjusting for me, so to speak.
Correct.
Right. It just has to fit in that box or that rectangle.
Okay.
One way or both ways. It's fine to be smaller one way. You just can't be bigger.
So as Jane was saying, even if it's a vertical pano, you still want the width to be 3840 and the height to be 2160, and it will do the adjusting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have another question, but I can't remember what it was. I'll get back to it.
Back. And pause again.
And at the end, if anybody wants a demonstration on how to set those parameters within Lightroom or Photoshop, I can demonstrate those.
Oh, awesome. All right. Thank you, Kemp. Okay. So I thought I would just pretty much follow along with the table of contents in the procedures and talk about, and you guys jump in if I don't cover something the way I should, or I was hoping I could minimize my... Are you seeing the little images over on the side, the thumbnails? I was trying to get rid of those.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, let's see. Wait a minute. There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
All right, got rid of the thumbnails. Okay. We offer 5 image evaluations a year. As I mentioned earlier, they come up at our second Tuesday of the month meetings. So we meet at 7 o'clock on Zoom as well as in person at the church. So you'll get an email with that link, and it's on the website and everything. So 5 of those meetings will be image evaluations. 6 of them will be presentations. And right now we're trying to figure out what we're going to do in December. In the past, we've had a banquet in December, but this year it got bumped into January, and there were a lot of people that said, hey, that's a really good idea. It's not quite so crazy. So at some point we may have 7 evaluations. Who knows? I mean, 7 presentations. We'll see how that goes. You do need to be a member. Our annual dues, I think most everybody probably already paid those, $45. There's the QR code. If you're like me and you've forgotten to do it already, you have till the end of February to get that in, but we, sort of remind you there. At each evaluation, you can do 1 or 2 images. 2 is your maximum. and you'll have a total of 10 that you've had evaluated throughout the year. And I tell people this is sort of, I think of it as a preliminary round for the end of year. So it's a way to get some feedback on your image, to find out if maybe you need to lighten it up a little bit or crop it here or add some presentation to it before you submit it for end of year. But it's just a great way to get some feedback. You can choose any combination of digital or print. One print, one digital, two digitals, two prints, et cetera, et cetera. And we also accept images in color or black and white. I should say monochrome, because we've had some people that like to do the sepia. So that's sort of a brownish tint. And that would fit into a quote unquote black and white or monochrome. We probably ought to rename that at some point, but for right now, color or black and white. We mentioned a little bit earlier, I think before we started recording, that we have assigned subjects each year. And you'll see a note come out beforehand. Our first evaluation in February is going to be what we call open evaluation. So 2 pictures of whatever they want to be. It could be landscapes, portraits, still life, whatever it is you'd like to take pictures of. But we do 3 assigned subjects each year. And it's to help us grow a little bit, stretch a little bit, come up with some different ideas. And Pat jumped in earlier, and hopefully I can remember the ones that we said. We have shadows, we have patterns, and I've already forgotten the third one.
Multiple exposure.
Multiple exposures. Thank you very much. That's the one we've already had a little bit of a training session on how to do multiple exposures. So you'll see the calendar. I have that in the later on in the procedures. You must do all of the camera work on those pictures, so you can't hire somebody to do your post-processing for you. All the work must be by the photographer, by you. That includes the staging and post-processing. We tried to define this, but it's hard. It's like it if you see it. If you're under the immediate direction or technical supervision of another photographer, a tour leader, you go on safari and somebody sets the whole thing up, tells you what settings to use, we really would prefer that you don't enter those pictures because it's not really your work. And it's kind of a gray area there. If you've gone on a training session and you're in someone's studio and they've set up all the lights and the triggers and the whole bit and they've hired the model and put her in there, it's really not your work. So we would prefer those kind of pictures not be entered into our evaluations and our competition. And if you have a question on that, the board of directors are very much on standby to be able to help you and answer questions if you have, something that might be in that gray area and you're not sure about it. We like to not see names on the front of on the face of the image, so let's not put any watermarks on there, because we like for our evaluators and then at end of year our judges to be able to look at the image and judge it on the value of the image itself and not say, oh, gee, that one was done by Karen Davis. I don't like her, so I'm going to give her a really low score. No, they would never do that. But let's not put names on the front. We're getting into a little bit of the technical stuff about assigned subjects. There's a little special thing that's added so we know that it goes into the assigned subject field, that they underscore and an AS. We'll talk a little bit more about how we name those files later on. And I mentioned that you're going to email those JPEGs into the digital director. And right now that's Kemp. And that is his Camera Club email address, digital.ccrva, in other words, Camera Club of Richmond in Virginia. That's how we came up with the CCRVA, at gmail.com. And we did say midnight, but I think we kind of would like to have them well before midnight on the Saturday prior to the image evaluation meeting. And that way, if there are some problems with the file naming or the sizing or whatever, then Kemp, who's our digital director, could get back to you and say, wait a minute, we need to do something. If they come in at midnight, it's not going to be a whole lot he can do to help you if there's some issues or questions. If we have an in-person evaluator, and we have 4 of them this year, we're really excited. Back in the COVID days, everything was virtual, and we basically eased back into trying to have some in-person evaluators so we can do prints. Then, as I mentioned, Michael Orr is our print director, and he is going to be on standby to accept your prints. And we'd like to have them a few minutes before, at least 15 minutes before the meetings, so he can organize them in the order that they will be shown up on the screen. And one thing that sort of a holdover from back in the COVID days, we will allow you to submit the digital image for the evaluation, but then if you would like to submit a print at end of year, you may convert any digital image to a print. And if it's never won an award in the Camera Club Richmond, you can resubmit that. And then I have your dates and deadlines down toward the end of this procedure, and we'll go over those a little bit. So let me take a breath here and pause and see if I have raised any questions or reminded Carol of the one that she was going to ask. She's laughing.
Oh, put the mic back on. Yeah, when you spoke about if the evaluator suggests a change in your photo, can you still change it and still use it after it's been changed?
Yes, ma'am.
For example, I don't know how, I'm trying to think of something more than just changing like the lighting or something like that. Suppose you erase something. I mean, or, you know, he finds something distracting and you take it out. You can still use it after doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as it originates from the same JPEG, from the same file, the same digital file. Yep. You can do that. You could crop it. Like you said, he said, well, that's really distracting. You know, there's some white there along the edge. Tone that down a little bit because it draws my eye out of the image. Yep. You can do all that kind of dodging, burning, recropping.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't
And that's
have
the
it.
beauty of it.
What about changing the title? I think that was a problem.
That's a
You can't
special
change the title
situation.
for, for when it,
Yeah,
if
I
you're
know.
going to submit it for end of year, you cannot change the title at all,
Okay.
unless the evaluator suggests so.
Oh.
And
And
in that
Pat,
scenario, if the evaluator did, and they do a lot, it depends on the evaluator. If they do, the procedure is when you submit it for end of year to Kemp, you'll say, here's my image. The current title is blah, blah, blah. If the evaluator or, its former title was this, so that he can check off, because we actually do check for that, things like that. So he knows that this has a new title, but it was, the evaluator had, suggested a rename.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. When you were talking about not being able to use images that you had helped in doing, you don't mean, like for instance, let's say you go on a puffin workshop, photography workshop, but you're taking your own pictures, you're not getting real guidance on a particular picture that you submit, an image, that should be fine?
that's fine. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're more concerned with, if the photographer, your teacher, instructor, sets up the lights and he's got, hands you the trigger and puts the model up there and poses her and all you do is click the shutter. It's really not your work. We want to see your work. So we're hoping to push people to do their own thing. But yeah, go get those puffins.
Well, I don't have one. I wish I could afford it right now, but next time.
Yeah, same here. Same here. All right. Any other questions before we move on? All righty. There's the schedule. I'm not going to read it out to you, but as I said, we have 5 image evaluations. So you might want to print this out, clip it out, put it on your refrigerator, buy your computer or whatever, because those deadlines are always the Saturday before. And as we said, earlier is better. And that way we can help you if there are some issues with sizing, naming, et cetera, et cetera. We know it's a little bit quirky there. All righty. So those are all the dates. And then I wanted to throw in just a little tidbit here for our end of year competition. We've had requests over the last several years to add a new category. So the board voted just last month to add sports and events. So our general categories that'll come up at end of year, because we generally have over 400 images come in for that competition, we need to pigeonhole them into various areas so that they can compete in animals or architecture, creative art, et cetera, et cetera. And now we do have that extra category there for sports and events, which could be soccer or baseball or horse races, or wedding photos, I guess, would come under events. Or if you're at a corporate function and, you're shooting something there that really catches your eye, that could fall into that category. So it'll be real interesting to see what we get in the new category at the end of the year. So kind of keep that in mind as you're clicking the shutter throughout the year. I'm always looking for, really nice landscapes, or I like to do architectural pictures, take pictures of lighthouses. But, now I'm thinking, let me see, am I going to try and sneak in some sports? And our activities director, Joe Ring, is always coming up with some great ideas for sports. He does a lot of roller derby meetups, and catching on our meetup group, and you'll be able to see some of the things that Joe has planned. You can come along with the group, but again, as Marta was saying earlier, if you're doing your own thing, it's just we've got a group of people going together, but everybody's shooting their own pictures. So those are our general categories. Those are the reiteration of the 3 assigned subjects for 2026, coming up in March, then June, and then again in September. So you might want to print that whole page out and keep it handy somewhere. Any questions on that? Okay. So you might be asking, well, we get these judges and these evaluators come in and to do these critiques. What are they looking for? We try to keep it simple. Some of the other organizations, if you're familiar with VPPA, which is the Virginia Professional Photographers Association, and PPA, Professional Photographers of America, they have a 12-point plan. We only have a 5-point plan. We want to look at these 5 factors. And of course, the first thing that's going to jump out at just about anybody, and especially someone who's doing a critique, is that wow factor, the overall impact. When the image pops up on the screen, does it tell a story? Does it invoke some kind of an emotion? So they're looking first for that overall impression. And then they'll squint their eyes a little bit and they'll start to look at some of the technical factors. Is it really in focus? Does the color look right? Is it oversaturated? I'll give you a little hint there. There are a couple of our evaluators that just start to cringe and the shoulders start to twitch when they see too much saturation in some of the photos. So those are the technical factors they look for. They look for creativity. How many pictures have we seen of Main Street Station? But can you shoot it from a different angle? Is there a different way? Are you looking down on it? Are you looking up on it? Did you catch a train coming by? Those kinds of things, that creativity. Composition, there are lots of rules out there, rule of thirds, and the spiral thing that I can't remember, Fibonacci's, whatever that one is.
Golden ratio.
Are you following? Say that again, Michael.
Golden ratio.
Yeah, there you go. Are you following those rules? Or if you break the rules, are you doing it for a reason? Because sometimes you want to put that lighthouse right smack in the center of the picture. And other times, you may want it in the rule of thirds. So they look at the composition. Does it make sense? Is it pleasing? Is it something that they like? And then the finishing, of course, this would apply to both digital and prints. Of course, if you're doing a print, we'll get into a little bit more, but it's going to have to be substantial enough to sit on a light box. So we can't just have a flimsy piece of paper. It's got to be backed onto something. And if you're doing digital, you can do some finishing, if you will. There's a great video out there on our YouTube from one of our evaluators, Anthony Rumley, that taught us how to put digital mats and a digital stroke around the image. And just sort of contain it sometimes. It's like a little frame around it that sort of keeps your eye focused on the image. And a couple of them are real big on doing a finishing of your images. So any questions on any of this? Righty, let's go down to the next page. Okay, this is where I'll hand off to the experts at some point, but we do have to format those images. We had a question come up earlier about resizing, and there's some rules out, some instructions out on our website on how to resize in Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. So we're not going to go into all the details of exactly how to do it. But if you needed one-on-one with one of us, we'd be happy to sit down with you. I'm better in Lightroom. Some people are better in Photoshop. You know, we can match you up with somebody that could really walk you through it. But the main thing to remember is, as Pat mentioned earlier, the image size has to be less, or 3,840 pixels wide or less, 2,160 pixels in height or less. And then, you know, you set those limitations when you export. If you're shooting RAW, if you're exporting to a JPEG file, you want to make sure that those limitations, and that's so it will show properly when we project it on the screen from our new projector, fairly new projector that we have.
Hey, Karen.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned JPEG. Somebody asked last year if we were considering or would consider using Apple format or a Mac format. And the bottom line on that is it could just open up Pandora's box if we start adding different formats. So it will always, it really just needs to be a JPEG.
It has to be a JPEG, right? Yeah, there are all kinds of new things coming down the block. But the way our program works that Michael so kindly has enhanced and put together for us is it actually, when your email comes in, it sorts out, and it has to have that JPEG extension on there. So can't send us RAW files, can't send us TIFFs, none of that stuff. It has to be a JPEG.
Hey, Karen, I'm sorry. I can mention a mistake I made way back at the beginning for anybody that's new with that, is when I did my title, I knew it had to have JPEG at the end, so I wrote JPEG on it. And then when I sent it in, whoever received it at that time, it had ended up with JPEG twice, because it made, by me writing it, it actually ended up as part of the title. So you don't write in JPEG, you just send it.
Point. Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah, the export process automatically adds, I think it's actually JPEG, I think it adds, but it so you don't need that. Right. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah.
If I could
Yeah, and
ask
the
you-
stuff as it's currently written can read either, the extension can be either JPG or JPEG.
Okay.
Both of those are acceptable.
Yes, thank you, Michael. He fixed it. In the past, it was very persnickety. I love that word. All right, and then the final caveat there is make sure that your file size is no larger than 10 megabytes, because frankly, your email probably won't send it if it's larger than 10 megabytes. Sometimes maybe 8, but and I love Pat wrote this section about the madness behind the file naming convention. So I'll hand off to her and she can tell you about this.
When images are received from you guys, there's a script that is run. Thank you, Michael Orr, for creating all these things. But there's a script that runs that breaks down the file name into particular pieces. So like the next section is actually going to explain the naming conventions, but there's a node. A node is like every single piece in between the underscore. So the first node tells you whether or not it's a print or digital. Then after that is the image title, and then after that is the photographer's name. So it's looking for this underscore in order to determine where the image title is and where the photographer's name is. So if you put your name as Pat_Hutchinson, it's going to really get confused and not know what to do. Or if your title is A_beautiful_day, it's going to think A is the name of the image, beautiful is your name, and who knows what it's supposed to do with the rest of it. So it gets completely confused. So spaces are perfectly fine in file names, which I think a lot of people don't realize. So if it was a beautiful day, it would be like D for digital _ A space beautiful space day underscore to say that's the end of the image title, and then Pat space Hutchinson. So this, which is exactly what Karen's showing right now. So the first piece is whether it's digital or print, and then there's an underscore to say that's the end of that particular piece of information. Then the title in this example, on a clear day, and you can have spaces in there, underscore, and Karen space Davis. I've seen people submit like Karen Davis altogether, which is fine. I can fix that, but come year end, when there's 400 images submitted, and the naming convention is much more complicated than this. I have to go, well, I did. Kemp will have to do it now. You have to go through, and it's really a nice idea for us. It's not necessary, but it's a good idea for us to go through and fix your name, because if you win an award, your name is going to show up. If it's all lowercase, it's going to be Pat Hutchinson all together in lowercase, which is really not what you want on your award. You want it to look good. So sentence case is a good thing to keep an eye on also, which it doesn't really say that here, but that's just, I guess, kind of a common sense thing. And then the JPG or JPEG, make sure that is there, which is when you export, it's automatically going to be added. And then for assigned subjects, it's the same process, but after your name, there would be an underscore AS. It doesn't matter for monthly evaluations. It doesn't matter what the assigned subject is, whether it's shadows or patterns or multiple exposures. You just need to say it's an assigned subject. And when we review these, or when we evaluate these, we evaluate the assigned subjects first. They're in image title order. So we do all of the assigned subjects, and then we do the non-assigned subjects. Did I leave anything out, Michael?
Pat, why do you have JPEG listed on there as, because if you put JPEG, then you're going to end up with 2 JPEGs at the end, right?
No, this is what the file name needs to be. So after you export it and before you send it, you need to make sure that this is what it looks like. So if you happen to put JPEG in your file name and then export and it comes up with 2 JPEGs, you need to remove one of them.
Okay.
This is the file name as you will send it, not as you're exporting.
The final result. Now, I'm not a Mac person, but in Windows, if you looked at it through File Explorer, it would have to look like this. I think it's called a chooser in Mac, but the same thing. You have to see the extension look like that right before you submit it. And so, yeah, that's the final result, not how you export it, but this is the end result of the exporting process.
So then you don't really put the JPEG down.
No, if you export it as a JPEG, it will add that automatically.
Okay.
What could be confusing to some people if they have their computer set up so that it hides file extensions, known file extensions, then you would not see the .jpg. That's one of the first things I always do whenever I start a new computer is make sure that it shows file extensions. But yeah, so it may be confusing, and that might be why some people want to add the .jpg to it, is because Windows or Mac is not showing the file extension, the last 3 characters of the name.
Which is a really good reason why you should submit these fairly early, because then Kemp will be able to point that out to you that, hey, you're submitting it with .jpg, .jpg at the end, and so you can figure out what's going on and fix it in a timely fashion. So, yeah, if you submit them early, he'll work with you to get things straight.
Brad, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did a while back. Sorry. As far as sizing these pictures, I don't use either one of those softwares. I don't use any software except the thing that comes with Windows or whatever. So I submitted 2 pictures because I thought we were supposed to do that for this thing. I didn't get anything back, so I guess they're okay.
I did get those emails, Brad. Right now, we're in the process of transitioning from me as the digital director to Kemp. And Kemp and I are going over things on Saturday. But after this Zoom call, I will look at yours to see how they look, and I'll let you know.
Okay, and so those would be for the February evaluation?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct.
So I don't have to worry about submitting some more.
So
Thank you much.
are you saying you use Paint?
No. Windows has a built-in photo enhancement program. or whatever.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
and I believe I just switched to Apple, which I'm kind of sorry I did. It's not as intuitive as I was led to believe, but anyway, and it has a similar program, Photomate, something like that. They're limited. I try to not tweak my pictures, or if I do, very minimally. But that's just me. But anyway, the main thing was sizing. I had no way to tell whether it's the right size. I guess it is, but.
You're talking about the Microsoft Photos then?
Yeah, I'm using right now I'm using the Apple equivalent.
Oh, no, I can't help you there.
Yeah, it's basically the same idea. It seems to have the same functionality.
In Microsoft Photos, though, it does show you at the bottom of the image,
Okay.
the dimensions, but,
And
I have
maybe-
nothing.
Yeah, maybe the other does as well. I'm just new to this, so.
And you can size it in the Microsoft one also to match those requirements.
I might be able to do that because the photos seem to go interchangeably between the two.
I think, Brad, if I remember correctly, because I just recently switched from a Mac to Windows, I think if you hover your mouse over the file name, it's going to show you the dimensions.
Okay.
And I believe the first one is the width and the second is the height.
All right. Excellent. I shall do that then. Thank you.
And there are people in the club that are very big Mac users, so you might want to, if you still have troubles, you might want to reach out to somebody, like just say, hey, I need help with this, and I'm sure there's people that are very skilled in Macs that could probably help you.
Okay. Good deal. I appreciate it. I'm learning a lot being in this club. I can tell you that much. Appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to move down just a little bit here. And feel free to jump in if anything else pops up, you have a question. We mentioned earlier that you can do print.
Karen, can I jump in real quick on one thing?
Sure.
If you scroll back to the file names, I know you mentioned it further down, but never mind. You got it right here on digital file requirements for prints. I was going to point that out, but never mind.
Never mind. It's in there. It's in there. Remember that old commercial? It's in there.
Yeah, I knew it, but I didn't think it was that close.
Yeah, that's okay. I think I rearranged this a little bit too. It sort of made more sense to put it there. So as we mentioned earlier, you're able to do prints and have the evaluator look at your prints. There are a couple of other things you need to be aware of. We don't want really teeny tiny prints. The smallest size that we would like to see, because we'd like to see it, is a 5x7. And because of there's a light box that one of our members built for us. It's made out of wood. And it's got these really fancy certain lights that it has to have. So it really can't be any larger than 16 by 30. So if you do put a mat, that includes the mat. So your picture would have to be a little bit smaller if your mat is 30 inches wide or more than 16 inches high. So that's the limitation on that. Then we want to stress that it needs to be on some kind of a firm, solid background, so that it can stand up in that light bulb. And we really don't want to see tape on, don't tape it to a piece of cardboard and send it in. Maybe mount it on some kind of heavier duty material that can stand up in the light box. So, Michael, you want to add anything to that?
Not only, because it has to lean on its own, and they will, if you're talking about year end, they will take, points off if it's like floppy. And the other suggestion is whatever material you use as a backing should be completely opaque so that you don't get any light shining through, incidental light, because that will ruin the effect of your image.
Alrighty. And then the other thing we don't, as Michael mentioned, we don't want the light to shine through it. So we definitely cannot accept glass prints because we don't want to take that liability of messing up your print. So no glass prints and no framed prints. So we just want the picture on some kind of a backing. A lot of people are doing canvas now, which is kind of nice. You know, you can get it mounted and wrapped around, you know, the frame. So those are acceptable. And we've also seen some metal prints that look really nice. So those are some options, but please no frames, no glass prints. And then also, so that our print director can keep everything organized, there is a little print form. I think it's 4 up on a page when you print them out. But it asks you your name, the title, is it an assigned subject, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see when you see that. It's pretty basic. But we need that attached to the upper left-hand corner of the back of your photo, so that as he picks up the photo, he can see whose it is, what the title is, and set it up on the light box. So one little extra thing. And then the burning question, yes, you must send a digital file in if you're going to bring us a print. And the reason for that is we will be displaying those to the audience that's sitting there in the church, because not everybody will be able to see that, 10 by 14 print on the light box, because, we'll have like 20, 30 people there at the church. And then we also have the Zoom folks that we need to think about that are zooming in from all over the place. We need a digital image to be able to present so that they can see what the evaluator is talking about when he says, oh, we need to crop it here, and I suggest that you lighten up this port, whatever. So you do need to send it in, and it does need to meet that same midnight or 11:59 the Saturday before deadline. So you need to get that in just as if you were going to submit digital and then bring the print with you when you come to the meeting.
Question. You said no glass prints. How about acrylic prints? Would also be sort of transparent.
I don't know. We've never had that question before. What do you think, Michael?
Well, the acrylic wouldn't break, but just remember too that you may not, you would see the background through it, and it, with the incident shadows and things like that, it may be a little. It may or may not be how you wish to present it. It would be technically acceptable because it's not the other reason, of course, for not glass was the danger for handling it and breaking. So obviously that wouldn't be a problem, and it would be rigid. It just may or may not present the way you want it to, because it won't be flat against a wall. It'll be leaning at an angle in a light box. So you would have some possibly, and the light will be coming down from above, so you probably have some odd shadows behind it. You could try it, but it may not present as well as you think it would, given the circumstances of how they're evaluated.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So, 40 years ago, I think I had posters mounted on foam board that I went to a place, similar to a Staples or something like that. And they mounted them on a foam board.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, foam board's acceptable.
Okay.
Just as Karen pointed out, the only caveat is you would have to arrange to attach it in a way that's not, obviously visible. Double-sided tape, for example, would work really well on that. Just no Scotch tape on the front.
Oh, okay. So the process that I did, I had them do it. It was permanently attached to the foam board.
They probably used a spray adhesive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is one that I did for year end for myself. It's foam board, and I use double-sided tape on it, and you can't see any edges to it.
Okay, so double-sided tape on foam board might be the best.
This is not showing up well here. I got to change. I can't change my back right here. Hold on, see if I can do this.
You want me to stop sharing?
No. Oh no, I think it could be. Hold on. Try this. All right, there we go. That's better. So yeah, this is one that I did for the year-end evaluation.
Your camera's not on.
Thank you. I can see myself on the image on the side. I thought it was on. Anyway, this is one of the images I did for year-end. Just happened to be sitting here. So it is foam board right here. I use double-sided tape on it, and in fact, my problem is trying to get it off. I like to save the print without getting it off, without ripping it. But yeah, and yeah, so it was perfectly acceptable. So double-sided tape, you don't see any attachments on it. It's one way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, obviously, but that's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did want to point out that these files, if you've just joined the club, there is an application that you complete, and then there is also a release form that we ask everyone to sign. And release it's for showing your pictures. And we actually have a couple of club members that say, no, I don't want you to share my pictures. So it's up to you. If you want them, you need to let us know that for whatever reason you don't want them to be shared, because we're going to assume that if you enter our competitions that you're basically granting us permission to put them on our website. We will show them may show some of them on our Facebook page. We also have a Facebook group that is a members only group, but the Facebook page is, a public page that we have, 1,000 or so people that follow us on Facebook. And then we also may put them in Southern Exposure, which is our monthly magazine. So we need to know if you do not want that to happen, but by entering the competition, you're basically saying, yep, it's okay to share them. So just keep in mind, we have a couple of members that like to show off their grandkids. Make sure that the children or the grandchildren, the parents are okay with those being out in a public space. So just something to keep in mind as you enter these images. All righty. So we've talked about how to get the images in the process, but what actually happens at a meeting? And we've hinted a little bit at this. I think Pat mentioned earlier that when we display them at our image evaluation meeting, we generally will do the prints first on that light box. Starting, if there is an assigned subject, we'll show all the assigned subject pictures together and have the evaluator go through those, and then all the other pictures. Then we move on to the digital images and lather, rinse, repeat. So that's what happens. When the image appears, the digital director or the print director will announce the title of the image. It'll be up there. The evaluator will give a minute or so of critique, suggestions for improvement, comments, et cetera, and then it is followed by the photographer's name. And then they move on to the next one. So that's how the process works. Those meetings do tend to run a little bit long, I will say, because at some point, I think we had 80 some images come in for a couple of our evaluations last year. And, we're up there saying to the evaluator, okay, you got to move it along. But those meetings can get a little bit long, but we do record them. So if you happen to miss, you can always go back and fast forward through the video to the point, where your image would appear. And as I think Michael mentioned, or maybe it was Pat, that they do appear in alphabetical order by title. So that's how they're displayed, and that'll help you if you go back and rewatch the video to see, well, what was it exactly that Anthony Rumley said about my photo? And you can go back and rewatch that later on.
Yeah,
and likewise, if you have to miss a meeting, that's always great. You can go back and see it later. I think I heard a question.
How do they view the digital images? What is that viewed on?
We have a projector and a screen. I'm going to let Michael or Kemp or somebody talk more about the specifics of the hardware, because that's not my strong suit.
Okay, I'm just curious.
They have the projector and the screen, and they make an attempt to calibrate the projector so to the screen, to the lighting in the room. But as far as purely digital images, obviously they're displayed on whatever hardware the evaluator has if they're remote. It's usually they're pretty good though, because they will color calibrate their monitors and things like that. So they're pretty good about getting things consistent.
Right. I think I was more, I guess my question was leaning more towards the end of year thing, like when they're all in there in person.
What happens there is that they will display it on the, we'll project it, they'll display it. A lot of times, if they have a question, they will go and they will also look at it on a monitor on usually the laptop for the presenter, the digital director's laptop. And they will actually walk back and look at both of them like that to get a good feel to ensure, is this thing that I'm seeing the in the original image, or is it just an artifact of the projection?
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yeah, they make a real effort to try to give, you know, a complete evaluation to it and ensure if they see something, mostly, I'll be honest with you, mostly negative. If they see something negative, they want to say, is that really there? Or is that just something I'm seeing because it's like, is that image, is that too dark? And I'll say, okay, is that too dark in the image or is it just too dark in the projection? And they will walk back and look at the monitor on the laptop and go, oh no, that's fine there. So, and judge accordingly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good question. And that does lead into a little bit of, since you brought up end of year, we'll get those procedures out as we get closer to, but the deadline of year competition is in October, and you're allowed to enter 10 images into the end of year competition. You notice there's a little symmetry there. You get 10 chances to get things evaluated throughout the year, and then you could enter those 10 into the competition. We also have a way of substituting out. So say, you know, and I've done this before, I turn in an image and I think it's great and it pops up on the screen, and you know, the evaluator goes, oh yeah, I just don't like this at all. You know, he's very kind about it usually, but I can get a sense of, you know, that's not, you know, checking all the boxes in his brain. So I can kick that image out and maybe introduce another, we call them a wild card, at end of year, so that you can come up with those 10 images to compete in the end of year competition. And it's an all-day process when, you know, like I mentioned earlier, we usually get over 400 images into the end-of-year competition. We have 3 judges come in, and we all sit in the room for an entire Saturday, and they go through all those images to come up with the winners in each of the groupings.
It was 10 hours last year.
Yeah, they were real chatty last year. Oh boy. And then I'll also add that it's not an all skate, if you will. We do have 3 separate groups that you can enter into that end of year competition. Doesn't matter, you know, during the evaluations throughout the year. But as you get to end of year, we have our entry level, if you will. We call it our novice intermediate category, a group. I'm sorry, wrong one. Novice intermediate group. And as new members to the club, you're invited to join whichever group you want, but you know, you can enter into that that grouping of novice intermediate photographers. The middle grouping is the advanced, and then we have an expert category for the people that, you know, are always the winners that get the trophies at the end of the year, like Heidi. If she's still here. Is Heidi still here?
I'm
Heidi
still here. You're embarrassing me.
And then Carol got a trophy this last year. That was so cool.
Great.
And you are not force me into a different category. I'm staying where I am.
Not quite yet. So there's a whole thing around that, but we didn't want you to think that you were going to have to compete with, you know, semi-professional photographers in an expert group. We've got that novice intermediate group to kind of get your feet wet and get in there and be judged, if you will, along folks that are along the same level. All righty, and then that's the very end for questions and help. We've got a whole group of board members, our leadership team. You see several of us here on the call, but you know, president, treasurers. I think I saw, is Jerry here? No, I don't think Jerry's here. He's our secretary. But we have a lot of folks within the club. We have Apple users. We have Windows users. We can match you up with somebody if you have questions and need help on something. Quite frequently, I'll get folks that'll send me a picture and say, I need a title for this. And I'll say, okay, well, do some brainstorming, you know, and just kind of get the creative juices flowing about, I use a spreadsheet to come up with titles for pictures. That seems to be a hanging point for a lot of folks. And I just do sort of a free association and write down a whole bunch of words. And then all of a sudden, ooh, something jumps out at me for a title. But the title is can be pretty important. So think about that. And as Pat mentioned earlier, and I think Michael said as well, once you set that title, then it has to carry through if you're going to enter that image at end of year, unless the evaluator specifically says, well, that title is really dumb, Karen. I think I entered one a while back that said it was something about first snowfall of autumn. And at the last minute, I looked at it and said, I'm just going to change that to black and white. And then I could almost see her scratching her head going, but if it's autumn, we don't see any autumn colors. And I went, yeah. So that one, I actually did change the title I think when I entered it at end of year, because it just didn't make any sense. First snowfall, something like that.
And one little word of advice regarding titles. The one thing that I've heard evaluators, not really in end of year, but in monthly evaluations, the one thing they really rag on titles is if it's too long.
Yeah.
They don't like long titles. So unless there's a extraordinarily valid reason for calling a meeting of the minds between the, two people on the sidewalk in July, don't call it that.
Yeah, and they usually get a little bit antsy about foreign words or difficult words. Yeah.
Anthony Rumley is really, really stickler for things like that. So he's called that out. And he's right. I remember, I don't remember the image, but it was this extraordinarily long title. And I think he was the one who called it. No, that's way too long. So
yeah, he launched into his lecture about titles.
Yeah.
And use words that are easily pronounced. I mean, if you're, over in Egypt somewhere and you're looking at something and you want the name of the city in there, sometimes that's difficult. I have to look them up to see how to say them.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information. We wanted to try and keep it to about an hour. I'm going to scroll back up here, see if anything hits your mind. Those are the email addresses for 3 of the folks that are on here. As Pat said, right now, the digital director email is in transition between Pat and Kemp. So you can always send it there and they can work it out between the 2 of them. But the list of all the board members is on our website. So you can see all of those folks there. All right. Any questions?
I have one more that kind of pertains to end of year again, if you don't mind. I know earlier they said if it's never won an award, it can be resubmitted. So does that apply to honorable mentions at all?
That's an award.
Okay.
Sorry.
So then you could. No, I'm just curious. And then if it's okay, that answers my other question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
All righty. I'm going to stop share so I can see all of your lovely faces here.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. We hope to see images from folks. So we hope we have inspired you to come and play. It's really not a painful process. The worst part is trying to come up with a title and then figuring out how to work through the file naming convention. But we're here to help.
The first time was the hardest time, but once you've done it, then you're like, oh, I don't care whether anybody sees my stuff. But the very first time, it was difficult. But then you realize that it's not the end of the world if they say something about your picture that you don't.
Yeah. You just get that thick skin, You
learn. Yeah.
And I will add one other tip. Try to keep a listing of what you have submitted, especially as you start to plan for end of year. And, if you specialize in landscapes, you could enter 10 landscapes at end of year, but you might want to branch out a little bit and do some different stuff because you'd be competing against yourself. And you could get 10 honorable mentions or, 7 honorable mentions and a 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. But, you might want to spread it out a little bit and keep a record. And as my record has gotten more elaborate as it goes along, because I need to remember where the original raw file was and what date did I take it. So that, I've got a JPEG here, but oh, dang, what year was that? So my spreadsheet, my family laughs at me with all my spreadsheets, but in my spreadsheet, I've got the original file name, the raw file name, and the date, so that if I need to go back and make changes based on what the evaluator said, I can pretty easily go back and find that file. So just another little helpful hint.
That's good advice. Good advice.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thanks everyone. I am going to go make some dinner, I think.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Y'all take care. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.